Yep, looks like everybody is here.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Joanne Hanson, the chair of the planning board, and I'm joined by Rich Whitty, Jay Reichgott, and Portia Hinshaw, the other members. And for the record, all the planning board members are here, and our counsel, Ashley Torres. And we're here this evening to review and the CIMNET application to take down a structure. And I'll note that one of the neighbors, Walter Dean, has written a letter in favor of that step. So with that, I think it makes sense to turn it over to the applicant to talk about what you're intending to do and how you're intending to go about it.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Small. I'm the architect for Jeff and Julia CIMNET. If I may, I'd like to share my screen and kind of go over the drawings and photos with you folks. Is that okay?
That would be great.
Okay. Okay. Can everyone see this okay? I'm starting with the photographs. This is a view of the front of the existing building. The building was built around 1900 or so, originally as a carriage house. Around the, I don't know, the 70s or 80s, it was converted to a residence. And then in 2010, the building was gutted by a previous owner in anticipation of an extensive renovation. That renovation never happened, and so the building sort of stood in this kind of gutted form for quite some time, until a few years ago, when Jeffrey and Julia purchased the property, intending to build a new house. But a career opportunity presented itself, which took them abroad. And so their plans to build a new house were kind of temporarily interrupted. But that career opportunity is sort of the end of it, I guess, is in sight. And they'd like to start with the first step, which is to take down the existing building. It's really, because it's been open to the weather for so long, it's really in tough shape. So there's probably not much more that can be done. The scope of the project is really to remove everything above the first floor level, which is, this is right here, the garage floor level is basically everything will come down to that point. So all of this material will go. We will save and preserve the rafter tails, or as many as we can that are in good enough shape. Some of these eyebrow windows, again, the ones that are in good shape. There are some interesting posts and beams in the front, as well as some timbers on the inside, which will all be saved, either to possibly use in the new structure, or to, if they're not in good enough shape to reuse, then perhaps to kind of use them as a model for new work. I'll just kind of go through the views here. This is around the side. This is in the back. And then this is in the back. And here you can see some, really nice stonework at the existing foundation wall. So we're going to preserve this foundation wall and reuse it. It's in good shape, and its original fabric, and it's really got terrific character. So, whoops. Sorry. And then this is a view of the inside with some of the timbers that we'll save. I'll then move on to the drawings real quick. So this is the site. Patterson Brook Road is right here. Here's the driveway. The house is here. There's an existing masonry garage building here, which will house the temporarily house the salvaged items. There's an existing pool here, which will remain. And these are the basically the demolition plan, the plan of each level, most of which will get removed. So this detail, I think, will show some of what will show what we're doing. This is the kind of the line of the first floor, and then everything above it gets removed. Because we want to preserve the foundation wall, we'd like to kind of make sure that it's well braced in the interim. So we're going to keep the first floor structure intact for the time being, and then put kind of like a weatherproof cap on it, as if you will. So essentially, if I go back to the photograph, from the front, it'll come down to this level, so you won't really see anything above it. From the back, it'll come to this level, and then there'll be like a platform at this level, which will be protected from the weather, and for creatures and that kind of thing. So I think that's pretty much it. Whoops. Jeff, did I catch everything? Is there anything that jumps out at you?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Are there any questions from the board?
So is there a basement now?
There's an
Or a
existing
crawl space?
Yes, for most of it has a crawl space. There's a small area with a basement. So that will all be enclosed by this deck, really. Now, it's probably most of the first floor structure is not in good enough shape to really save. It's really in bad shape. So, but and I think for the future building, they'll want to have good access to the crawl space. And so forth. But for now, I think it makes sense to sort of make a stable platform that's weatherproof that kind of encloses the foundation wall, just so that it's not that foundation wall isn't like flapping in the breeze, if you will. That it's
Right.
kind of covered and protected.
Well, harking back to my childhood, I certainly got into basements of abandoned
Oh,
things. So that's
right,
really,
sure.
animals or curious children, or so you feel that this is going to be sufficiently
This will be a secure
tight
envelope. Yes.
that
Yeah. So
you can't access it.
the only access point will be from. I'll go back to. I'll share my screen again if that's all right. So you can see along the side here, there's a series of doors. One of them will remain operational and locked, of course. The rest will be all boarded up. All the basement windows will be boarded up. Some of them are still sort of open. You can see that one has been opened, I guess. And the platform itself will be totally sealed up.
So Jay, other folks, would you like to ask questions?
Excuse me. Yeah, I have a few questions and comments.
Sure.
Mostly comments, but that's okay. Is there an oil tank either in the basement or in the ground that you guys know of? And is that part, is remediating that part of this phase of the project?
There's an LP gas tank that's underground. That will stay there. It won't. It's as you're facing the garage door, it's to the left, and there's a shutoff valve which is there, and it's been shut off.
Sure.
And so
But
that
no-
will stay for now.
It's just the usual question, all the buildings in the park, or a lot of the buildings in the park, are old enough that they started out with coal and got switched over to oil, and then as propane became available. I'd say that as part of what you're doing, you might want to, if you haven't done it yet, you might want to see if there's one hiding someplace.
That's a good point. I'm not aware of one, but we should look.
Right. And so I'll go down my list of, I should start out by saying I'm a civil engineer, structural engineer, and I do a lot of building restorations and renovations. So
Great.
Some of these are things I've stepped in, and hopefully you don't have to. But given the age of the building and its history, any paint before 1982 is likely to be lead-based paint.
Most of the paint has already been removed. Certainly on the inside, you could see from the picture that it's been totally gutted. On the outside, all the siding's been removed. So really, what's there now is the sheathing.
Okay.
So yeah,
all the big three, right? Lead in the paint or not, asbestos, which may or may not have been used in numerous surfaces. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, I'm sure.
Yeah. There's no asbestos.
They're facts of life, and just as with any project like this, just make sure people are keeping their eyes open.
Sure.
You're basically going to take what's left of the first floor, patch the holes, and turn it into a roof for the time being.
Yeah, temporary roof. Yes.
So I understand that it still will now make a ground level platform for anybody who is wandering onto the site, either on purpose or who shouldn't be there.
Yes.
So
Sure.
Again, as that reconstruction or progresses, I would be considering that. If you were my client, I would be advising you to consider that a floor that was likely to get traffic, as opposed to a roof, when thinking about how strong it needs to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Right. For sure.
This. I only have two more, I promise. Closing up all the windows is great, except you want to make sure that you keep ventilation in that space, or when you do finally open it for reconstruction, you will have all kinds of pretty mushrooms growing in there. So again, if you were my client, I would advise you to get some ways to get cross ventilation into the basement space while it's closed.
Okay.
And the last one is, obviously, this is the first phase of a later reconstruction project. I'm
Yes.
assuming that people aren't going to decide that they're going to live in the basement and never do anything else. Do you have any idea what the phasing of that is? Or, I mean, this will happen say in the next several months. And then we'll be seeing you this time next year with plans for reconstruction, or you don't know where you are with that yet?
Jeffrey might be able to answer that better than me. But yes, I think you've sketched it out pretty well. I think when they return from England, I think we'll begin planning the new house. So
okay, so we're going to be expecting this to be in this condition for some time.
yes, yeah, for a while, but not as long as it's been.
Right,
in the current
I
state.
understand.
Yeah.
And again, okay, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Sure.
Portia, Rich, do you have questions? Rich does. You just have to unmute then.
You have 8 acres plus,
Yes.
and is the water table sufficient for a basement or not?
That's a good question. The basement looks fairly dry. There's a sort of wetland area not far away. Um, uh, you know, it's hard to say why they didn't build a full basement. Probably because it was a carriage house and they really didn't need a full basement, I'm guessing. Yeah, not really sure.
Okay, because I remember that behind it, I think is sort of a pond and a swamp all together.
Well, in sort of as you're facing the front of the building to the right,
Yes.
there's a wetland area. I think the back, with heavy rain, can get some water, but it's not really. There's no pond back there.
There's no, I mean, if I can jump in,
Sure.
there's on the area, the land area where the house is, there's no collection of water. Where the lower garage, that separated garage, that's cinder block building to the right, on the level where the marshy part is, that gets some settled water, but quite honestly, it only started getting that since John, if you remember when that water main blew up a few years ago in the driveway. Since that happened, there's been more water down there on occasion, but near the house, there's not. It's just the way, if you look at the drawings of the property, it's sort of a tiered piece of property. From the left, it's the highest. Well, all the way to the left, it's the lowest. Then it goes up.
Whoops.
Jeff, did you,
House.
you're freezing a bit.
Yeah, it'll happen a lot.
Well, if you can hear us, if
If I keep talking.
I think the answer to the question is that by the house it's dry, but there's some areas of the property which are a little wet.
Yeah, I think now that I took my video off, if you go back, if you go back into the village hall and look at some of the old maps, there's a reason it was called Patterson Brook Pond at one time. Back at the turn of the century, it was a pond. I don't know what happened to the pond. It's not there now, but it is a little damp.
So I would just say, that's something that as beyond planning the house, you need to think about the property as you're coming back and the appropriate drainage to make sure that, I don't know if that garage is staying or going, but the reality of climate is that we're now getting, 3-4 inches of rain in a short period of time. And so that needs to be planned for it as you're doing the work of analyzing what's going to be there next. Rich may have another question. I wanted to ask one relating to the oil tank, which is just kind of what vintage it is and when the property changed hands, whether it was inspected and thought.
So I don't know. I don't think there's an oil tank, but there is a propane tank that's underground.
Okay. Same question then.
Yeah, it's not brand new, but it's not terribly old either. It's hard for me to really say, but it's, I don't know how old it is.
Yeah,
When did
so
someone last live there?
2009, 2010.
No, certainly something to add to your list of investigations when you're getting ready to do the next phase.
right.
I mean, it's kind of
It may have been investigated at closing when they purchased the property, but you want to make sure that it's functional, no leaks, all that good
Right.
sort of stuff. Rich, I'm sorry, did you have any additional questions?
No, I just wanted to make sure that, it's better to take care of water problems at the beginning than later.
Yeah, well, we've all had to adapt over the last few years as the water flows have increased. So we also have a short environmental assessment form. Jay's eagle eyes spotted that 13B was missing, but that's been added now.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry about that.
It happens. I read these things for a living, so it's really easy to see when
No, I
it
appreciate
doesn't look right.
Ashley, I don't know if you have any comments regarding it, or does anybody have any questions about it? Jay obviously gave it the thorough review, as did I. Well, not as quite as thorough, but I certainly read through it. I don't know if hopefully everyone else did. So Ashley, do we just need to,
So for purposes of seeker, this would be considered a type 2 action because you're looking at the demolition in the context that they will be building the new single home. So you could do a motion to classify as a type 2 action, but the village code provision requires you to review the EAF. So that's why that had to be submitted. So although it's a type 2, that was there to give you some information about the project and the thing about wetlands that had popped up. That way you could make sure there's no, impacts to them.
so certainly my perspective is that this is the adequate as is. Anybody else have any other comments on it? So Ashley, do we just, do we adopt it, acknowledge it?
You can just, someone can make a motion to classify the action as a type 2 action under seeker, and that'll then complete your environmental review.
Can I have that motion?
I'll make that motion, and yes.
And I'll second
I'll
it.
second it. Okay.
Do we need to vote on it, or that's sufficiently that we've had the motion?
If you could take a vote on that as well.
All right, and all in favor?
Aye.
We have unanimous in favor.
Chairwoman Hanson, just to note, there is one neighbor who's on the call who would like to speak, Andy Kranz.
Yes, hi, I saw you pop in there.
Hi, I just didn't know if this was a public comment moment or if it was a board moment. So if I can speak now, great. Otherwise, I'm happy to hold off until you all are ready.
No, I think we've covered most of the ground.
Okay.
And do
Perfect.
you all know each other? I mean,
No,
Andy,
I was going to say, this is Jeff. It's great to meet you in a funny format, but we bought 18 Patterson Brook Road in 2020, and my partner and I have been living here full time since then. And so we're really excited to see that you all are taking an interest back in the property, and what will be done with it. I'm happy to hear that there's going to be some preservation or at least attempted preservation of some of those original architectural elements. I think it was originally the kennels for all of this, including Howard Shore's property, was all part of the Ledgelands estate originally. And so we're in what was the carriage house. I think this was the kennels, which were actually quite famous for chow chows. There are still the Ledgelands chow chow that goes through the AKC. And there's a lot of documentation from that time period covering Mrs. Wagstaff and her kennels that were quite advanced. So I'm excited that there's going to be some element of trying to hold on to some of those original elements and that stonework. It's really great to hear. I did want to speak on the water element. So we've just in the benefit of living here over the past 2 years now, we've seen what happens there. The property, the whole parcel sits at the bottom of what comes down off of Camp Comfort Road. And so with those rapid storms that you were referring to, Joanne, there is significant accumulation of water on the site. And we've actually had an issue with this repeatedly with mosquitoes, both in, the pool cover ends up becoming like a full-fledged environment with flora and fauna and palm fronds and all sorts of things. But this also happens, it's not, the marshland typically looks like it naturally absorbs it. Maybe that's just the wetland environment. Where it's problematic and there tends to be standing water for long periods of time are just beneath the current building envelope on the driveway. There's a tree and a bit of a roundabout, and a tremendous amount of water sits there and does not drain. And I'm concerned about what removing the existing structure, if that's going to actually just be even worse for, since there's going to be less of a blockage or any sort of obstruction there to absorb that, as well as with the cap, if that's going to be another area where water can pool, or if that's going to be graded sufficiently so that it won't be sitting on the top. But we see significant water there, significant water running off onto the pool and that area, and then as well as even back to the sort of terraced gardens that are just over the rock behind me, I think actually is very, very wet. And so I would think, I don't know the full implications on wetlands or anything of that, or what the water table needs are for a basement, but that has been in our time living here. It's obviously great to think about having a repaired structure on that parcel from a view shed perspective, but the major concern we have had has been around drainage and if you actually review, I forget the particular climate project that has done the mapping of it, of future flooding and particular areas of concern within all of Tuxedo Park. That's one of the only parcels that they highlight as a major area of concern. And I think it is because it just happens to sit at this, at the foot of that mountain. So, I think from a neighborly perspective, it would be, again, we're really excited to have neighbors. If you guys are coming back, it'd be great, and excited that there's some historical preservation happening, and would just love to see if there are ways to mitigate and be thoughtful about the drainage, since it's I mean, even right now from that rain we had just the other day, there's pooled water all over. So I would want to think about how, I don't know how that goes in the planning process or where that comes into play, but it's definitely changed from a climate perspective. I think to your point, Joanne, it's just the pace and the rapidity of the accumulation.
So Jeffrey, I don't know when the last time you were on the property, but after one of these hard rains, it is, and I assume Jeff is in England. Is Jeff? Yeah, he's still without the video.
Yeah, I have not been on that property since 2019.
But it might be worth it, Mr. Small, to take a look at it, because things are still pretty, even though the rain was a while ago, and I think unfortunately we're about to get another rain.
We'll get some more of this in the next several days.
Yeah, so, but it's worth kind of seeing it when it has been hit.
Right.
So that you get an understanding, and obviously John can, work with you about some of the approaches that have been used to contain the water, and obviously I'm sure the Simmons want a functional dry property.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's something, when we work on the new house, that's definitely going to be something that we work on. I'm not sure that the current demolition project will change the drainage pattern at all.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just
yeah.
saying, to see it when it is quite wet is
Right.
to gain knowledge about what you're
Absolutely. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'll do that.
So, any other?
The only thing I'd add to that is while you're messing about, if one of the things is like a roundabout, a driveway end that's flooding, it might be as simple as cleaning 10 years of sticks and leaves out of a drain grate somewhere. To let
Or
the
a
water.
broken drain.
Yeah. I mean,
True. That's a good point.
Yeah, we've we walk by it most days, and when it's clear, it doesn't appear from that vantage point that there is a drain grate there, but we could be wrong. It's just there's a couple of areas on Patterson Brook where there's noticeable water accumulation, but that parcel is just really, really substantial, and there's probably 3 or 4 areas where we've found it to pose a lot of issues with mosquitoes, and just we also have a dog that loves a good exploration, and will come back quite drenched.
So I believe is everybody asked their questions relating to the demolition? Jay, you've got one more, or you're going to move?
that was me putting my hand up saying, I'm good.
Okay, so I think we need a recommendation, a motion that the planning board approves the demolition as presented with the plans.
I
Thank
make
you.
that.
Approves. Consent. Jay, can you second?
I can, sure. I'll second that.
Super. All right. Everyone in favor of approving the demolition permit?
Aye.
And that's unanimous. So I think we are set on that. We need to approve one set of minutes. So I don't think the rest of you all need to stay for that exciting activity. Andy, nice to meet you over the internet.
As it is, yeah, great to meet you as well, and Jeff, I hope to don't know how often you guys are getting back here, but would be great to meet you and your wife when you're around.
Now that COVID hopefully is passed, we have plans to get back several times. We just reactivated our club membership, so we'll be
Amazing.
got to make that worthwhile.
Awesome.
Well, super. Does anybody, so I'm going to let everyone else drop out. Does anybody,
Thanks,
I know that
everyone.
Jay said he did
Thank you
not.
very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thanks.
Did not have any comments on the March 9th meeting, no minutes. Does anybody else have comments? May I will move then that we approve the March 9th of 2022 minutes.
I'll
May I have a
second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Desiree has pointed out, I think we have 2 that go back into early 2021, and I will look at those, and the next time that we get together, we will, I'll send them out. I'll review and send them out. Ashley, I think everybody's met Ashley, right? Over the course of the years. And so Ashley is continuing in her assistance to us as our counsel.
Yes, glad to be doing so. Good to see everyone. It's been a little bit.
Yeah, sort of in and out. So I don't, is there anything else, is John, that we need?
Will we be back in person for meetings after?
I believe the state is going to require us, well, I think they pushed it out to what, June 15th?
Oh, okay.
So it's
Was
been,
that-
there was a recent, as part of the budget process, the legislature adopted a bill where and it was signed by the governor, where they're changing the whole virtual meeting process. And now it's going to require a local law by the village board in order to be able to have virtual meetings. And then even so, there's going to be limited circumstances where you're able to do so. So it would have to be, they call it extraordinary circumstances, whether someone's ill or to actually allow a board member to participate virtually. So they're making it a little more difficult, but there is this 60-day grace period where through June 8th, I believe it is, you'll be able to have virtual if, I don't know if anything's going to come up for this board, but
Well, I've reached out to they independently received at the village board. I've also pointed out that some of our board members go away for the winter, which, so they are not physically here, so they're going to have to be remote. And mentioned that to David. And we've got that capability. It's a little bit trickier to balance the both physical and frankly, I'd love to push back on our legislators and say, let's continue remote, but we shall see. But it has been referred to the village to address this issue. So my inclination is to stay remote as long as we're allowed to stay remote.
Yeah, because we leave for a good part for the summer.
Right. So, I mean, that's just, we're going to have to work with the realities of our board members. So with that, anything else that we need to discuss or do?
No, there's nothing in the immediate future that I'll be sending to the planning board. If something comes up, I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, great, guys. Good to see you briefly. And it's nice to see the Simmons moving forward, and eventually they will come back to us. So now we know some of the issues we got to look out for. So with that, I will move to close the meeting. May I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
And we are closed, and I wish you all a good evening and merry as well.
Yeah, merry, happy, all those things. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.